One thing, if you saw the announcements, the dinner, not so fancy dinner parties, sign up for those. We'd love to have you join all of us. They're great. It's a great opportunity to meet new people, and just kind of, that's what summer's for. Summer is for barbecues. It's for potlucks. It's for getting together. And so I encourage you guys to mark your calendars on those days and join all of us as we get together in the summer. One thing that I want to make sure everybody is aware of this morning, we shared some news of some transition in the church. We feel like the church should be a great place where people are able to step back and rest, and that be okay, that it not be shameful to admit your limitations, which is something we'll be talking a lot about today, and to say it's time for a season of rest. And so we honored Stephanie Stotts this morning, our women's director. She's been the women's director here at ACC for at least 3 years, probably somewhere between 3 and 4 years. Last week, she had led a successful women's retreat up to Calvin Crest, where the women had a wonderful, wonderful time. And but prior to that, she said, "This is my last rodeo for now." So, we prayed for her, blessed her, and also announced that our new women's director is going to be Sarah Edwards. So Sarah has functioned as the. We'll make sure that she knows you all clapped. So Sarah is a wonderful, wonderful lady here at Action, deep in the Lord and love for people. So she is going to be wonderful and run this thing without a hitch. And so I don't even know what that saying means, but I know you're supposed to say it at times of transition. So make sure that next time you see Sarah to give her a big hug, and ladies, give her your support. When the women of Action get together, show up and support the efforts and endeavors that she's doing. So let's bow our heads in prayer and ask God to make our hearts ready for His words. Sound good? Lord, it just struck me today how odd it was that it was just raining and raining and raining outside in a season where it shouldn't be raining like this. And Lord, it reminded me of your wonderful provision. And it comes from unexpected places and in unexpected times, but it will always come. And I pray, God, for us who have dry and weary hearts right now, who have been poured out and not yet filled up. I pray, God, that we would see that you are the God who provides what we need when we need it. And I pray, Lord, you would pour into us. Take our dry hearts, God, and pour deeply into them, that we may have more to give and more to share. And so, Lord, speak through these words and speak to me in this process as well. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I'm already getting it. I think it was pretty impossible the moment I showed up here today. Unless you're new, you're sitting here looking at me, or the moment you walked in and say, something looks different about Jason. I don't know exactly what it is. Can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe he dyed his hair. I don't know, but something. Well, let me tell you, in case I haven't already told you, on Friday it happened, and I turned 40. I turned 40. Now, I'll tell you what, Mike, I am not 42. Mike says I look 42. I do not, Mike. But I'll tell you what, it beats the alternative. Turning 40 beats the alternative. So, of not turning 40 ever, right? So, I know what you're thinking when I say that. I'm 40. Now you're thinking, there's no way. You don't look a day over 36, Jason. Not a day over 36. And I'll tell you, I have found a way to capture my youthful glow all through my 40s. And here it is. Proverbs. This is biblical. This is biblical. So I'm not just wasting your time with fluff. I'm giving you a biblical principle. Proverbs 20:29 says this: "The glory of young men is their strength, and gray hair the splendor of old." So here's the deal. Shave off that splendor and whammo, you look young again. And I don't know if this is this says something about me, about my oddities, I think. I've been planning this for 10 years. I swear. For 10 years, I've been saying, I'm going to have a beard all through my 30s so I look wise. And then when I hit 40, shave it, boom, and I'm going to look young again. So this is my plan. See, so I aged to look young. That's the goal. So now, but while I might look younger, I'm realizing something about aging, is you start to run into some of your limitations, don't you? You know, I said at 39, I said, when I turned 39, I said, I am going to get in the best shape of my life. That way, when I hit 40, I'm in the best shape ever. And I'm in my okayest shape. And I call that a win. You know, I'm not in my worst shape. So I'm finding here, as you get older, the key is to lower some expectations, and you feel really great about yourself still. So here are some things I've discovered that I'm looking back as I was reflecting deeply on my age, and I'm realizing something, that some things when I was younger that I could do when I was younger that are infinitely harder now. And the obvious, I talked about it last week, skateboarding. I was a skater growing up, and I tried to find my poser pick. If you were here last, I could not find it. It actually is devastating me. I can't find it. I'm going to turn everything upside down to find that poser pick. But now it's like, you know, before, if you rode the skateboard but couldn't do tricks, you were a poser. I'm just, if I can just have enough balance to just go down the driveway, I'm calling that a win. I don't need to do tricks, because when you fall so much harder now, don't you? So much harder. Another thing I've discovered is that you can't eat 2 Whoppers anymore. Man, at 16, there was like a fire burning inside of me, and I would eat food and it would just go psst, disappear, and I'd eat more food, psst, disappear. Now I'm like 3/4 through the Whopper, and whoo, man, I'm getting stuffed. You realize metabolism is a beautiful thing that disappears. Young people, enjoy it, enjoy it, enjoy it. Here's another one. Staying up past midnight. Isn't it crazy? Like, the next morning, even if you get a full 8 hours of sleep, if you sleep, it still feels like you get hit by a truck. I did it on my birthday. We stayed up till midnight. The next day, I was like, man, what happened? What did we do last night? We just stayed up till midnight, didn't we? If you feel horrible, here's another thing that you don't even imagine, but sleep. When I was a kid, sleep was the epitome of the easiest thing you can do. There was nothing easier in life besides sleep. I could sleep in class. I could sleep on the floor at my friend's house. You know, Ryan would be like, hey, you crashing here? Yeah, I'm good on the floor. Just give me a pillow. Not even a pillow. Roll up my hoodie and make it, behind my back all night long. Don't wake up. No, I used to be able to sleep through the night. Like, what happened? No one ever warns you that sleep gets hard. It's like something you have to work for as you get older. The other day, Lola says to me while we were driving, she says, Dad, you might be getting old, but you're still spry. And I was like, yeah, I kind of like that. I'm spry. So I actually looked it up. I was like, what's the definition of spry? And it's a name that you call an active old person. Spry. So I'm just going to hang on to it. Spry. You can be old, just be spry. So things I'm learning fast. Well, there will be a point to all of this banter in just a moment, but let me catch you guys up. If you're new with us today, we've been in this series called Wellspring, and we're talking about the importance of emotional health in our life. I can't underscore it enough how important emotional health is. You cannot be a deeply spiritual person if you are not emotionally healthy. See, everything comes from the wellspring that is within inside of you, your heart and your soul. Proverbs, our key verse for the series, says this: above all else, I don't want to go into that too much, but all else really does mean all else. Guard your heart, for everything you do comes from it. So even though none of us want to admit it, something that is key for us to have and experience emotional health and guarding our heart is understanding that limits actually help guard what's going on inside of us. The good things God wants to do inside of you. Limitations actually help us. Now, this is not I'm not talking about setting a bar low, as I was joking about a little bit ago. This is about actually living within the limits that God has created us to live in so that we can thrive. I believe that when we live according to the limits that God is setting on our lives, we will actually thrive higher, and the bar will raise higher than we ever expected when we live within the limits of creation. I was thinking about a metaphor for this, and the Dead Sea came to my mind. And the Dead Sea is actually the lowest place on earth, outside of actually the sea. going to the bottom of the sea. But the Dead Sea is the lowest place on earth. It's the sea that's Israel, Jordan, and Syria all surround the Dead Sea. And something that is happening to it, it is shrinking at in a very, very scary rate. So there's no place like it on earth. The ecosystem there is absolutely unique to just this particular place. And it's literally disappearing. This past year, it shrank 5 feet in 1 year. Now, do you remember like when the earthquake hit Japan? They're like, Japan actually moved from the last earthquake. And you're like, Japan moved? Like it moved. Japan moved. And they're like, yes, by 6 centimeters. Like, how do you even measure that? How do you know if Japan moves 6 centimeters? You know, that's like seems to me to be unmeasurable. But when you look at the Dead Sea and you see that it is shrinking at up to 5 feet a year, it doesn't take you much to realize that this precious jewel of the earth is going to disappear if it keeps going at this rate. So far, it has lost 1/3 of its surface area since it started receding 50 years ago. So here's what's going on. Some contributing factors. Since the 1960s and 70s, Israel, Jordan, and Syria all began diverting water from the Jordan River, which is the primary water source to replenish the Dead Sea. So they're drawing water in order to water their crops, drink of it, all those types of things. But it's not going towards the sea, which it has since creation, right? It now only receives 10% of what it needs just to maintain its current state. 10%. Then you add in the factor that scorching heat is continually depleting the water through evaporation, and the fact that companies continue to draw from the sea the water and its mud because it's mineral rich in order to make their products. This means that the Dead Sea is dying, and we know it, and it's dying because it's drawn without limit while it's not being replenished adequately. Drawing without limit, without adequate replenishment. And that is such a perfect picture for us. Such a warning for our own lives. See, for this exact same reason, many of us are suffering from a drying up of the well within the well springs of our lives. Our heart and soul feels like it's just barely a trickle anymore because it's being withdrawn from without limit and it's not being replenished adequately enough. Our pace is absolutely running us dry. See, there are few things more soul-draining, more damaging to your heart than being diminished by the demands without replenishment. See, anybody a plate spinner in here? Any fellow plate spinners? I am a plate spinner. Any jugglers? Any jugglers? I am a juggler. And you know it's bad when you start answering it to people like, hey, how you doing? Whew, juggling. Just juggling. And I don't really juggle. I can't juggle. What I'm talking about is just trying to keep up with the pace of life. See, we go, and we try to hold things together, and then the very next day we just go again, and this pace isn't just exhausting, it actually is killing us, and we are aware of it, just as everybody knows the Dead Sea is withering away, but we don't stop it. Because at the end of the day, I think we think we're special. I think we think that we can not cheat death, but I think we can cheat life by having everything that we want without limits. But the bottom line is we can't. See, we were made. Even in our perfected state before the fall, we see this in Genesis 1 and 2. We were made with limits on our life. Isn't that interesting that God made creation that was unfallen with limits and limitations? God's desire for us was to understand our place in creation. So in order for us to be able to follow Solomon's wisdom and guard our hearts, it must mean something has to happen. To ensure we're being replenished and to guard our heart by guarding our yes. And those are the two things I want to look at today. See, we do this by remembering our place in creation. It's very simple. You ready for this? Like, if you only remember anything today, remember this. If you need to write it down, but I have a hunch you'll remember. Ready? You are not God. That's it. You're not God. You are not God. You can't keep going without stopping. You can't do everything. Now everybody, we're going to get a little Oprah-y right now. We're all going to say it together. Ready? I am not God. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Woo! Doesn't that feel good? all of a sudden you're like, whoo, all the burdens that you've been putting on you, thinking, I got to be God, I got to take care of it, I got to be everywhere, I got to be everything to everybody. And when you say it, hey, I'm not God, that's God's job, not my job. All of a sudden you're like, whoa, it feels good. It feels good to know my place in creation, that God's got that job and that's not my job. So let's look now. How do we replenish? Exodus 20, it says this, beginning in verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, your son or your daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor your foreigners residing in the towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and that's all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. See, what does it say to us? It says you cannot work with no end in sight. You cannot do everything. You cannot be everywhere. You were created with limits. That's thinking you were created with limits on purpose. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't part of the fall, on purpose. But this doesn't mean that you can't thrive within those limits. See, as the created, we can thrive in the limits that God is giving us by stepping in sync with the rhythms of creation. The rhythms of creation that have began since the beginning of time. So what did God do? In Genesis 1 and 2, we see that God gets to work creating creation. He's very busy for 6 days. And what does he do on the seventh? Everybody knows? He rested. That's exactly what it said in Exodus. The seventh day of rest established the Sabbath, and it was set apart by God as a holy day where work ceases on that day. So the Sabbath establishes a rhythm in our week that keeps our lives not only dependent on God, but also in balance in our lives and our comings and our goings. So the Sabbath has been established to ensure that our hearts are continually being replenished through worship, through play, and through rest. God desires that there's at least one day a week where you are being poured into. One day a week where the reservoir inside of your heart and soul, the wellspring, is being refreshed so that you can worship, play, and rest before him. See, God, why did God rest? Did he have to rest? No, he's God. He's God. He didn't need to rest. He was like, woo, man, I'm beat. I got to just take a day off. Hey, guys, you got it? He didn't do it for him. He did it for us. He did it because he knew we needed to. He was modeling for us what is an essential part of our lives, essential part of our humanity, and an essential part of what it means to be made in the image of God. Peter Scazzaro, in his book, The Emotionally Healthy Church, he says this: the essence of being made in God's image is our ability, like God, listen to this, to stop. The essence of being made in the image of God is our ability, like God, to stop. So much of our faith, especially as Americans, we see faith as something that's always making, always creating, always doing, always striving. When right there in the beginning of creation, we see that part of our God-likeness is the ability to say, enough is enough. And now I will stop. Peter goes on to say this: we imitate God by stopping our work and resting. If we can stop for one day a week or for many Sabbaths each day, we touch something deep within us as image bearers of God. See, now what has happened to us though? Unfortunately for most of us, the Sabbath day has become the dumping ground to do all the cruddy stuff that didn't get done throughout the week, right? Throughout the week, we're like, oh man, I got to go and clean the gutters. Put that on Saturday. Oh man, we gotta, go and dig out those weeds in the bag. Put it on Saturday. Oh man, I gotta go Saturday. And then pretty soon, here comes Saturday, or maybe it's your Sunday, whatever day that is. Pretty soon you get to that day and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the cruddiest day of the week. I'd rather be in my cubicle right now staring at a computer than doing this kind of work at this moment. See, it becomes a horrible day instead of a blessed day. Just because we're not earning a paycheck, it doesn't mean that we're Sabbathing. That is not Sabbathing. What is Sabbathing? It's finding a day and making it holy. What do we do in it? You do what's worshipful. You do what gives life and that brings you and others around you joy. You play. You pray. That right there, that is Sabbathing. And that will assure that your heart and soul are being replenished instead of continually drawn from, which we've gotten so accustomed to. See, secondly, a rhythm of work and rest goes beyond just one day of work, one day a week. What does God do? At the end of every day, every single day of creation, he does something. He stops at the end of each day. He steps back. And he admires what he has just done. He steps back and he says, "It is good." He marvels at the work of his own hands. In Genesis 1, at the end of every creation day, it says this phrase, "And there was evening and there was morning." And then it goes on, the first day. It appears again in the second, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth, as a way to separate the days and to separate the work. So interestingly, we see that even before the sun and the moon are created on the fourth day, you see this phrase. So before there's a sun, before there's a moon, there is day and there's morning and there is evening. Isn't that wild? What's going on? Genesis 1:14 says this. "And God said, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times, and days and years." So the sun and the moon, they mark sacred times in our days, weeks, months, and years, but the sun and the moon didn't create them. Each day, there is a time to work, there's a time to create goodness in the world, and each and every single day, there's a time to cease from our work, to step back, and to enjoy what we had just created, and rest every single day. So what does it say? What is Genesis saying to us? It says that both activities are holy. Both your work and your rest are holy activities. See, we don't see it that way, do we? As Americans, most of us see only our work as an important endeavor. Only our work is something that is really, really meaningful. I mean, you get a group of guys together, and what are they bragging about? Like, hey, how much did you work? Oh, man, I'm working like 60, 70 hours a week. And everyone's like, whoa. That's manly. And anybody that's like, yeah, I clocked in like 30, 35, or lazy. Because what's the impression? What's the implication? Is that the more you work, the more you're worth. The more you work, the more you produce, the better you are. It defines the value of who you are in this world, isn't it? But listen, God didn't work 6 24-hour shifts. He didn't work endlessly on every creation day only to go home, whatever home would look like for God, fall in his bed and yell, "Oh, TMIS, thank me, it's Sabbath." No, that didn't happen. God, every day, God ceased from working during the evening, every single creation day, to just stop and admire creation. So why does evening come first? See, in the Jewish understanding of time, even now, the new day begins at sunset. And this is why it says evening and morning, not morning and evening. So what is the implication here? What's happening is that work flows from a foundation of rest. Your best work is going to come after you've rested. Your best work is going to come from having a restful soul. Your best work is going to come because you have been replenished. So in the same way, the seventh day, as the seventh day models rest for us every week, God establishes a model of rest for us every single day of our lives. There's a rhythm of creation, a Sabbath rhythm that's built into every single day. And it's more than crashing on your pillow while you're still wearing your work boots. Evening connotates a restful period before you go to sleep. It's a time to eat, a time to play, a time to laugh, a time to enjoy family and friends. It's a time to worship and give thanks to God for everything he did during the day. It's a time to recognize your humanity, your dependency, and your limitations and go to sleep. Now, to be honest with you, that is an incredibly hard one for me. It's hard for me to feel like at the end of the day that this day has had enough. It's time to go to sleep. Instead, I'm constantly still thinking about what else can I cram in? What else can I watch? What else can I consume? What else can I read? Just so I can squeeze a little bit more in this day to make this day still feel like it was worth it. Instead of saying, you know what? Enough is enough. This day has had enough. I'm going to turn off the lights and close my eyes and admit that this day is good enough. And go on to the next. Listen to what Ecclesiastes says. This is Solomon again. What do people get for all their toil and anxious striving, which they labor under the sun? All their days, their work is grief and pain. Even at night, their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. Like if you ever do it, anybody like do a devotional poke and hope? You open up your Bible and you just poke to a spot and like hope it's good. This is one of those that like if you read, you're like, this is not encouraging. This is depressing. He just told me everything I do is meaningless. You have to read all of Ecclesiastes to understand Solomon's wisdom, and it's beautiful once you do. He goes on to say this, a person could do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their toil. This too I see is from the hand of God, for without him who can eat or find enjoyment? See, what Solomon rightly points out is allowing your mind to be consumed by your work in the evening when you should be resting is an absolute meaningless endeavor. How many of us let our work occupy our minds when we go through those doors? How many of us let our work consume our thoughts even as our kids are playing in front of us? How many of us let our work continually pound our thoughts as we try to mull out a solution to a problem, even when we should be present with the people that God has said, this is your greatest gift that I've given you next to me. Enjoy them. And we're still off somewhere else doing our work. Solomon says, that, my friend, is meaningless. Step away from your anxious thoughts. You won't find a solution in wrapped up in your anxiety. You rarely will find something worth bringing into the next day when you continue to mull on it in the evening. Rather, just step back and enjoy the gifts that God has given you. See, what happens biologically to us when we as the created follow or stray from the rhythms of creation? See, first of all, it absolutely, completely affects our health. Study after study shows that an imbalance between work and rest destroys us physically, it destroys us mentally, it destroys us emotionally, and yes, it will destroy you spiritually too. We've all snapped at people, haven't we? People we love when we come home because of a rough day at work, because we've been depleted and we're running on fumes. We know how quick it is to lose balance emotionally when we feel drained spiritually and mentally, don't we? See, those of us who work over 55 hours a week, we have an increased risk of stroke by 1/3. And it also raises the odds that you're going to have a heart attack. See, we think we're doing something. We think, my hard work, I'm just going to keep working, keep grinding, I'll make the boss happy, I'll produce something good. You are just destroying yourself and your longevity. You're cheating your family instead of being a presence in their life well into your 70s and 80s and nowadays 90s and who knows, maybe even 100. Maybe I'm not even over the hill yet. What a wonderful revelation. But if you work in a way where your work will consume you, there's no way. There's no way. You will be destroyed by it physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and all the studies point to it. And do we think that our culture that grinds people down cares? Absolutely not. Our culture doesn't care. Our culture wants to consume you to keep producing so we can keep consuming. As work weeks get longer and leisure time shrinks, what's happening is that people are becoming sicker, more distracted, more absent, more unproductive, and less innovative. So the very thing that we think is going to produce these things is actually producing the opposite of what we're aiming at. Neurologists discovered that the lack of sleep actually shrinks your hippocampus, and that affects your memory and making you less productive at work. So therefore, what's going on? The quality of your work is affected greatly by your willingness to step into the rhythm creations and get yourself replenished. Remember, rest and work is the model before us. Rest and work. The more you are replenished, the better your work is going to be. See, one study took two groups of people. One that worked long hours, never took a vacation, and were always accessible and available. Thank you, iPhone. You know, everybody, boo! What was it like 20, 30 years ago before these things happened? You actually went home and people couldn't get a hold of you, huh? But now we're always accessible. So they followed a group that was always accessible. And the other group worked 40 hours, took vacations, and turned their phones off. And guess what happened? Surprise! The ones who had limitations, who had boundaries, were hugely more productive than the overworkers. Don't you think that God's saying something? Don't you think that there's something to stepping into the rhythms of creation? See, what God has modeled for us, he wants us to step into it so we can rest and work and then step back again and say, just as God said, it is good. You'll never be able to say it is good if you never step back and admire what's been done. We've got to rest for our own emotional sake, for the people around us, for their sake. We've got to slow down. Lastly, one of the keys, as I said, guarding our hearts is not just step into the rhythm creations, but also say yes to the right things. See, and this is a pretty simple point here, but every time you say yes to one more thing, you're actually saying no to something else. You just don't have any more time. You can only cut the pie in so many small pieces until you just stop cutting it, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with saying no to something. It's okay to say no. Listen to what Jesus says, Matthew 5:37. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil. And he's speaking about oaths right now, and he's talking about being people of our word. But listen, he gives us the option to say no at times. That no is just as good of an answer at times as yes can be in other times. But when we say yes, actually mean it. When we keep saying yes to everything, guess what happens? Pretty soon, we hit a tipping point where we just become a flake. We stop showing up to things that we say yes to. We might be present physically, but we're not there mentally or spiritually. We're absent. So start saying no to more things so you can really say yes to the important things. Now, once again, we're all going to practice it, right? Just to feel it in church, okay? Hey, guys, after church today, I want to get everybody together and go sweep the blacktop. Will you guys do it? Doesn't it feel good? It feels great. It feels great. Say no to the right things so you can say yes to the important things. You know, there's times, we say this at the very beginning at our pizza thing, we say our goal here is that everyone does something so that a few don't do everything. And that's our hope, and that's our goal. And so some of us do need to say yes to some things so we don't put the burden of everything on the handful. We need everybody to step up, but there are seasons in which we honor and we welcome and we want to establish in this church where it's okay to say, right now, it's got to be a no. Right now, it's got to be a season of rest. And you know what? That is perfectly okay. We want you replenished. We want you full, more than just we want you to produce something. I'll close with these couple questions, and I'll have the worship team come after this. But do you have clear limits between work and home? Or is it muddied? Is your phone always on? Are you always thinking? Or are you present with your family around you? Next is, do you have clear set boundaries between you and dysfunctional and needy people? Because for some of us, we laugh. That wasn't meant to be funny. But think about this. There are people in life who you need to set clear boundaries with because they will drain you. They will take, and they will take, and they will take, and they won't stop taking until you set a boundary and say, enough is enough. Because why? Let's go back to the only point I really care about. You walk away. You are not who? God. You are not God. As much as you want to save somebody, you can't save anybody. There's a parable of a man who was walking on a bridge, and he comes across another man who had a long rope, and he was curious, why is this man carrying a rope? And the man says to him, hey, do you mind holding the end of this rope? And the man said, sure, I'll hold it. Well, the man took the other end of the rope and said, thank you, and he jumped off the bridge holding the other end of the rope. The man holding the end on the bridge says to the man, why would you do such a thing? Why would you put yourself in such danger? And the man says, never mind that. Just please keep holding the rope. Don't ever let me go, because if you let me go, I'll perish. Now, whose fault was it the man jumped off the bridge? But the other man said, had this sense of, I can't let this person fall. So when he says, okay, well, here's what I'll do. I'm gonna try to pull, and then you pull yourself up at the same time. And once I'm pulling, you're pulling. We'll get you over the edge. And the other man said, I can't do it. I'm just too weak. I can't help. Just keep holding. Keep holding on. Don't let me go. Until the other man realized, after standing there for several hours, that there's no way he can keep holding this man's rope. He didn't put this man into the situation in the first place. See, our job is not to hold everybody's ropes. That's God's job. There comes a point in our life where we have to set boundaries and say no to people, even people that we love, and say, listen, I will help you if you are willing to help yourself up. I will help you and get you up off of the bridge if you are willing to go with me and journey with me to the hospital to get better and to get healthy. That's what I'm willing to do. But I can't do it, especially when we look and there is a whole sea of people all asking us to hold their rope while they've jumped off the bridge. You are not God. God's not asking you to be this person to everybody. You have to understand your own limitations, because sooner or later it will take you over the side with you if you don't at some point say, this boundary of mine, I have to let go. This was not my choosing, this was yours. So do you have boundaries with dysfunctional people who will continually drain you, who continually deplete you and draw from you? If not, you're going to be drained. See, learn to say yes to the right things. Learn to say no to the right things so you can say yes to the best things. This is key to making sure that your wellspring does not run dry. If the worship team would come up right now, one of the things looking at how do we apply this to our lives, in my own life, I recognize my own limitations and my need for rest. And so for me, what I draw from this, and this has been in the works for a couple months right now, in July I'll be taking a sabbatical for the month of July because I just need a break. I just need to rest. And my hope is that by establishing this, by being not a Superman who I'll just keep going until I fall over dead at 45 from a heart attack, to say, you know what, I'm not God. And there's some wonderful people here who can maintain things probably even better than when I'm here. That can do things excellent and well, and I can trust that I can let go to be able to rest, and out of that rest, there can meaningful work can come. And I'm so excited about the fall. I'm so excited about what God is going to do after I've taken the season of rest and being able to recalibrate and be able to see with new vision and new dreams instead of going to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And so I hope that by doing this, this establishes that in this church, it's okay that even no matter who you are, it's okay to rest. Our leadership needs breaks because we aren't God. And that's you too. So what does this look like for you? What does it look like in your life? How do you live this out? How do you step into the rhythms of creation that God has set and established at the beginning of creation? And what does it look like for you to reflect the likeness of God in your life by stopping? What do you need to stop? What do you need to let go of? What do you need to say no to? And so if we'd stand to our feet and open your hands in front of you, and we're just going to take a moment to stand in some silence. We're going to take a moment to listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit who would speak to us. Tell us where are those places that we just need to stop. Those places where we've tried to be God instead of reflectors of God. Just take a moment and let's listen to the voice of the Lord. listening, just do this. Just draw in a deep breath and slowly let it out. Feel just for a moment. Rest. Letting go of some burdens that you've been carrying for a very long time. Breathing out the anxieties that we've picked up along the way. Letting go of the need to find our worth in what we produce. So Lord, we recognize that we often run ourselves dry. Give and we give and we give without being replenished by you. But Lord, we pray that we would make some adjustments in our lives, that we would step into the Sabbath rhythms, that we would live our lives in a continual Sabbath of being replenished, of rest and work. That we would have time to stepping back and admiring the work of our hands, knowing that our Father has delighted in us. To be able to be fully present with those around us, God, instead of always distracted, always thinking of the next thing. Lord, I pray that as we do this, we would find ourselves being replenished and restored. I pray that we would find that wellspring inside of us would run deep, that we would have more to give to those places where we know we're supposed to say yes to. There would be plenty, Lord, because we have put ourselves in a place where we've been poured into. So Lord, give us the courage to be able to buck against a culture that says to never stop. Give us the courage to be able to let go of ropes that we shouldn't be holding anymore and nobody's asked us to do. Give us the courage to be able to live this out and to step into creation's rhythms. We thank you, Lord, in your wonderful and precious name.